Hi, and welcome to Pipes and Pondering. There are a variety of opinions about whether or not video games are worthwhile. You have some people, many of the older generations, that believe that video games are really just a time waster. And then you have a lot of people, mainly of younger generations, who think that video games are fun and that's really the point of them, is just to entertain. However, I would like for us to take a closer look and ask whether or not video games and indeed art in itself is actually worthwhile, or whether or not it's a waste of time. Now, a couple of clarifiers here at the start is, first of all, I'm not going to debate whether or not video games are art. I certainly think that they are, but we'll talk a bit about how they conform to different types of art a bit later on, after we talk about what the general purpose of art is. And secondly, one aspect of video games that I'm not going to talk about in this video is the social aspect of video games. That tying into whether or not video games are a waste of time is really worth its whole own video. And it's something that I might touch on in the future, but to try to tackle that as well as the question of video games as an art form would be way too much for this one lecture. Now, for us to question about how to examine video games properly, I think it's important for us to understand a couple of words when it comes to contemplating or consuming works of media. The first of these words is the word entertain. That word comes from the Latin meaning inter, and then tenere, the first meaning among, and then the second one meaning to hold. So it basically means to hold among. Also, my apologies, I am very rusty in my Latin, so if my pronunciations are off, which I'm sure they are, my apologies. So basically, entertain, the current definition means to hold among. The older usage of it meant to continue. Whenever we are entertained, we are held oftentimes among a variety of other people, whether it be in a movie theater, whether it be at a sports stadium, and we are entertained that we are just continuing doing the same thing, sitting in the same chair for potentially multiple hours. We have the word entertain, and then I'd also like us to take a look at the word amuse, which I actually think is even more compelling. The word amuse, this definition is, I believe, from Leon Cass. I don't remember where I've read it, but it really stuck out to me when I first read it a few years ago. That this etymological understanding of amuse comes with a, the prefix a, obviously meaning not. And then muse coming from the ancient Greek, the understanding of the muses, the ones who inspire. And so to be a muse literally means to not be inspired, to be without inspiration. I think that both these words, both entertain and amuse, really depict most people's view on art nowadays. That it's something that we are just supposed to passively take in, that if you have fun, if you enjoy it, as long as it's not hurting anybody else, then what's the big deal? You can just go and enjoy whatever you want. However, I would argue that both these words and people's acceptance of these mindsets are fundamentally problematic. Because both words are terms of stagnation. That, like we talked about the original use of the word entertain, just to continue, you're not developing, you're not growing, you're not changing. And I think that all art should fundamentally move people. And by move people, I don't necessarily mean that all art has to be high art, that only the elite are able to comprehend and be moved by in some sort of vague and grand sense, but all art should be transformative. That whenever you watch something as simple as Avatar: The Last Airbender, you should sympathize with the plight of a young child who's been thrust into a position of greatness. You should sympathize with Katara and the necessity of her being a mother figure when she herself is but a child. That I think all good art, no matter whether it is low art, high art, or even pop culture, I think that no art should be without its very compelling factors that move its audience to help them grow as people. Therefore, art that merely muses or entertains is missing the point, that it is just letting people stagnate, to be in stasis, and not actually helping them to grow as people. Now, it should be understood that good art should obviously encourage people to move forward, but sometimes people, because of their own faults, are not receptive to works of art properly, right? I mean, how many times have we sat down just to veg out to a legitimately good TV show or a good book or a good song without it actually affecting us as we should? Once again, that's probably a topic of another video, but I digress. Let's specifically talk about the idea of entertaining and amusement in a negative way when it comes to video games, because these are really the main problems that most people have with video games, is that they only amuse, they only entertain, they don't help people grow in any way, shape, or form. First of all, let's talk about how one of the biggest complaints about video games is that they hinder people's ability to participate in the world. That you hear plenty of stereotypes about kids who play video games so much that they don't have any social lives outside of video games, that they develop carpal tunnel, that they're not able to think or do anything outside of their gaming sessions, that is all that they want to do. And I think that this is definitely a very legitimate concern if this is the only thing that people are doing, that they only play video games. However, I wouldn't argue that that's unique to video games. The same thing happens with any pastime, any art, any hobby, whether it be video games, whether it be watching TV, watching and discussing football or other sports, that if you let one aspect of your life overtake everything else, that is fundamentally problematic. Now, I will admit that I think one of the issues with video games is that it is more prone to this than other hobbies. That if it was just as easy to be addicted to reading too much as to video games, we wouldn't be having this major backlash against video games since their inception. So there certainly is a greater danger to video games, but that doesn't make them inherently flawed. It just means that their potential negative is more likely, if not handled properly. Now, moving on to another common critique against video games that I think is valid at times, is that oftentimes video games are just used to kill time. That's a phrase that you hear periodically. That, oh, you have a couple hours here, you have 30 minutes there, you have 10 minutes on a commute. I'm just going to kill some time, play a video game. And I think that is problematic. I think that's problematic with video games, with a lot of movies, and TV shows, and how we handle a lot of different facets of our modern lives. So I don't think that killing time is a legitimate way to enjoy video games and use them as deeply as they should be used. I think another facet of killing time with video games has to do with people that are suffering from depression. This is an issue that I've experienced a fair amount in the past. The idea that I would wind up just leveling up a character or doing another run on a roguelike just to kill time because I'm feeling extremely depressed and not really enjoying the video games, that I'm literally just killing time. I don't know what else to do, so this is the easiest thing to get my mind attached onto. And I think that's certainly a major issue. And this is when video games merely amuse, they merely entertain, that this is not innate in video games. I think that they are sometimes more prone to this than other works of art or other forms of media, but there are proper ways of using video games. And we can see this through merely comparing them to other art forms. That if you look at video games, that's actually where a lot of modern visual art comes from. That if you think a Thomas Kinkade painting is a piece of art, then every aspect visually of Elden Ring is a work of art. Every aspect of Bloodborne is a work of art. That if you think that classic literature such as Prometheus Bound is a work of art, as other classical pieces of literature, how Prometheus and Io are critiquing the gods for being dictators over those that are subservient to them and not helping them properly, but using those under them for whatever whims that they possess. Then God of War 2016 is also a work of art. That the whole journey of Kratos is him critiquing the gods, him saying, okay, there's something evil about these gods and how they operate. Then the fact that he becomes one of them. And 2016 is him wrestling with that. God of War 2016. Him wrestling with the fact that he is a god and how can he live ethically. And more importantly, how can he encourage his son to live ethically in light of this, knowing that he has divinity within him. If you think that a car or any other work of engineering is also a work of art, then you have to think that video games are works of art as well. Everything from the basic coding to make sure that the game runs smoothly to how all the various systems interact. And I think that that's one way that games like Borderlands and Path of Exile show off a lot of mechanical artistic value, how they have so many different numbers that interact with each other. And if it's well balanced, like those two games are, then it actually functions quite well. Now, this has obviously just been a very brief examination, quick firing some points about visual art, story, and mechanical artistry within video games, but there are certainly innumerable ways that we could talk about this. To wrap us up, we'd like us to end on a really vital point for not just video games, but all works of art. That after someone has finished playing a video game or watching a movie or even just enjoying a good cup of coffee, whenever they walk away from that piece of art, that art was used appropriately if the user is then more in tune with the world because of that piece of art. So, for instance, if I am playing Red Dead Redemption 2 and then I log off and go and have dinner with my family, there should be something about Red Dead Redemption 2 that has changed me in a positive way. Obviously, it doesn't have to be something that I have rationally processed, right? Because so much of art, actually, you could argue the deepest moments of art are aspects that are not completely rational, that really affect us on a subconscious level. But there should be something about going through Arthur Morgan's experiences, whether it be hunting and then realizing that my wife has spent time working on dinner, has prepared a beautiful meal for us, or it could be contemplating the instability of the Old West and how I'm thankful that our world, for all of its concerns, are not that unstable, at least not right now, and doing everything within my power to try to keep it from going back to a less stable point. Similarly, if I have a good cup of coffee, I should finish that cup being thankful for it. Thankful for the fact that I have enjoyed something to give me a bit of an energy boost, enjoyed the fact that it was a beautiful mix of flavors of rich caramel, deep coffee notes, whatever it might be. And it's from that thankfulness that I should be able to enter the rest of the world and be a better person because of it. If art doesn't make you a better person, then it has either made you a worse person, which once again is the topic of another video, or you have just stagnated. You have merely been entertained or amused. And as we have seen in the fall of Rome, as we are seeing in our culture, merely being amused is one of the greatest dangers for civilization, because you're not wanting to change, you're not wanting to grow, and most importantly, you're not wanting to love others. So, in conclusion, in order to actually use video games at their best, they have to help you become a better lover, to love those around you, to love other works of art, and thereby help you to become more in tune with the world rather than less in tune with the world. That's about all that I have for this topic, at least for now. If you have any thoughts, feel free to leave them in the comments below. Once again, if you have any video games you would like to any video games you would like me to talk about, or any other topics, feel free to leave them in those comments, and I hope everyone has a phenomenal day. Cheers.